We better hit up the Green Lantern next.
All right.
Okay. So the Green Lantern.
John.
Hal Jordan.
Hal Jordan.
And then there's
Hal
the
Jordan.
second one, which is
John.
his first name is John. I
Okay.
can't remember his,
Yeah, I can't
his
remember
second name.
Hal Jordan. Okay.
And then also, I think Guy Gardner was the Green Lantern for a
Yeah.
time. And he started using a yellow ring at some point.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I think most people associate Green Lantern with Hal Jordan.
Right,
He was
right,
the
right,
original.
Yeah.
Which, something interesting, when the ring, if I remember this right, when the ring went to choose somebody on Earth, it actually chose Bruce Wayne first.
Is that right?
But it felt that he was
know
too
that.
associated with fear, and so it chose Hal
Nice.
Jordan because he was the second most powerfully willed human.
Wow.
If I remember that right, I always thought that was interesting.
That is very interesting.
It's like Batman always has an iron will. I'm a Batman fan, can't you tell? But yeah, he has like an iron will, and so does Hal Jordan.
Right.
So it was always, I always wanted to see them have a ring battle. Now they might have actually, because I had heard all these, the Blackest Night, the Brightest Day, these comics came
Yeah,
out with
right.
all this Green Lantern stuff, and I heard at one point that Batman was using the Yellow Lantern ring, but I never read it. But I always thought it'd be interesting to see Batman versus Hal Jordan
absolutely.
using the green and yellow rings.
It's funny. I never got too deep with it, So.
But you know what, Hal
That's very
Jordan,
interesting.
he's awesome. I especially what they did with the movie. I know a lot of people didn't like a lot of the movie, but the one thing I did like is he was using more complex mechanisms. He was
Right.
using like the Gatling gun and the slingshot cars and all this
Yeah.
stuff. He was using these complex, moving part things as
Right.
part of the ring, his projections of his will,
Right.
versus the stereotypical fist and the globe and the wall type stuff. I like that. They should do that more with Hal Jordan. So
You know what I never understood? Now, there's probably an answer in the comics. But what if someone destroys the lantern?
they can probably get a new one.
Oh, it's just as easy.
Probably, because I think those little lanterns are just like a. There's a giant lantern on their planet,
I see.
the main
Yeah.
planet, that recharges those lanterns. I think,
I see.
and they just. So I think maybe they can just get a new lantern, smaller lantern to recharge it. I might be wrong about
Sure.
that though.
There's a lot of it's like a flashlight running out of batteries.
Yeah, that's what it is.
That's the only thing I don't like.
That's that's his weakness. That's his overall weakness. What I don't like too is how sometimes they make the Green Lantern really powerful, and sometimes they make it where his will is broken. Like his projections are just like Superman can just smash through them like nothing. Sometimes I always hated that. And I'm like, the Green Lanterns are this defenders of the universe, like of all these planets. This coalition of the galactic police. They have these really powerful rings, and yet some people can just smash through them like it's nothing.
Yeah.
I always thought that was really frustrating, and then other times they can't smash through them at all. And I always thought that was really frustrating about it. But it's a weakness for them that they only have so much energy to run on.
Okay.
So
Well, what do we know a little bit about the Flash?
yeah, the Flash.
We could run through them a little bit, but I know you, Chris. You know more about these characters than I do. Do you want to touch on the Ant-Man, Black Panther a little bit?
Yeah, well, I'll just run by these guys real quick.
Sure.
Ant-Man, they're doing the movie on them.
Right.
They're actually going to do the second Ant-Man. Trying to remember, Scott Lang, I believe is his
Okay.
name. The second Ant-Man, he's like a rehabilitated thief.
Okay.
He used to be a criminal, now he's a good guy. He like in some of his comics, he has some pretty good comedy. He can make some pretty funny observations to
Yeah.
everything around him. But the original Ant-Man was Hank Pym, who was actually one of the original Avengers.
Yeah, that's what you told me. That was interesting.
A lot of people hate on Hank Pym, and they think Ant-Man's a lame name, and even if it is, okay, but he has some really fun science fiction aspects to his character.
Really?
He can shrink down to the size of an ant. He
Yeah.
gains all that strength, and he can if you've seen the Ant-Man trailer, he at the little tiny size that he is, he can still hit you way harder than he would as a normal person.
Wow.
He can communicate with ants. I mean, he was originally designed as a science fiction character and just kind of was brought over to the Avengers. So I mean, that's his strongest aspect is the science
Right.
fiction part of it. That's what, and they're going to go with the comedy aspect of Scott Lang for this.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's kind of his gimmick. And in the later years, he was actually kind of railed on because they wrote a story where I believe he hit his wife, and so that was a big thing. He created Ultron in the original comics,
That's
which you're
right.
going to see in the movie.
Him and Iron Man, right?
No,
was
in
it
the
just
original,
Solo?
in the original, it's just Hank Pym, I believe. But they've done versions since then where they work together and stuff. I know that for sure.
So it's pretty much a genius.
He's really super intelligent. He invented Pym particles, which is, or he discovered Pym particles. That's what allows him to shrink down. He can also become a giant, and he gains like the skin density gets thicker as he gets
I
bigger.
see.
Like
I
it,
see.
so he becomes more difficult to hurt and stuff. So that's kind of his thing. He's a little small or big. Black Panther. He wasn't the first. Well, I guess maybe he was the first African superhero. I'm not sure. People always say African American, and he's not. He's actually African. He's an African hero. The Falcon was the first African American hero. He was actually a sidekick, well, a partner to Captain America. I think it was during the '60s that they had their run. Captain America and the Falcon. They were fighting all kinds of things. Some fun stuff, some ridiculous stuff. But the Black Panther, he's the king of Wakanda. I think his suit has vibranium layers in it. With vibranium, it absorbs any impacts. So, like hitting this table, for example, it would absorb that, and
I see.
and it wouldn't. There would be no. I'd hurt my hand, but I wouldn't hurt the table at all. His nation is over a vibranium, the biggest vibranium deposit on Earth. They pretend to be a really archaic society, but they're really way more advanced than most other countries. So they actually trick the world into thinking they're very primitive, but they're really not. And Black Panther is one of the smartest people in the world. Definitely a great role model for African American kids to read on, because he's awesome, and he can go toe to toe with Captain America. He's one of the few humans that can really go toe to toe with Captain America.
Wow, that's great. I don't know too much about Black Panther. I do not.
He's a good character. I don't know an extended amount myself. But he tends to be a more disciplined character. And a more serious character approaching everything. But he's a good one nonetheless. Now, the last two I'd like to touch on are Green Arrow and Hawkeye. Green Arrow came out.
Them for a second.
Green Arrow came out first. He came out in 1941, I believe, and then Hawkeye came out in the 60s, and I think he was kind of a spin-off of Green Arrow. Maybe not. I might be wrong about that, but they do their trick arrows, all that stuff. But I've always liked Green Arrow a bit more. Because he's willing to actually kill people. He's like a darker version of Batman. He's willing to kill people. He doesn't have a problem with it, and later on he does. And he becomes conflicted. But Hawkeye was a villain initially, and he became a good guy after a few runs, I think. And so, I mean, they're the archers. They're the archers of the group. That's their thing. They use their trick arrows and stuff.
It's funny. Who plays Hawkeye?
Jeremy Renner.
What do you think about that? Do you think he does a good job of portraying Hawkeye?
Oh, you know what? No offense to Jeremy Renner, because I think he's a good actor, but Hawkeye is not that amazing of a character in the first place. The best version of Hawkeye that I watched was I'm not sure what Avengers cartoon it was, but there was one of the Avenger cartoons. They have it on Netflix now. That he has a more comedic approach to things, and they actually have it where he's saving the Avengers a lot of times, because everyone else is running in, and he's like, I'm not doing that, and then he shows up and is saving everybody at the last minute. That was the best interpretation of Hawkeye I ever saw, and I was like, wow, they're doing some really good stuff for him. But other than that, he doesn't have a lot to work with. I feel like so.
Yeah, it's not like he's not super strong.
No, he's just a human. He's got a really good eye.
That is it, huh?
That's it about the character analysis. We just kind of
That is it.
I wish I could say that was a brief summary, but it really wasn't.
Yeah.
So we're going to actually have to speed it up a bit here. We're running out of time. So let's talk about the narrative direction of DC versus Marvel. What do you feel like the narrative direction of DC is?
I'm not exactly sure where they're going.
For the cinematic universe?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I'm not too familiar with the comics enough to give a specific answer in where they're going. What do you think?
They're going dark. They're going.
Oh yeah, well,
they're going so dark. Like, as we'll discuss the Man of Steel movie again at the end of this.
One of my favorites.
They're going really dark with the narrative. Versus Marvel, where there's hints of darkness, but overall it's a much lighter tone.
Right.
That's, if anything, I would have always felt that DC would have had the lighter tone and Marvel would have went more dark.
Yeah.
It always felt like besides Batman, they were a bit darker. You know.
Do you think it's funny now that you mention it, even with the Aquaman poster, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a very dark tone. Even with the Superman, at the end, the Man of Steel movie, it was a very dark ending.
Mm-hmm. That whole movie was dark.
Yeah, it was. Even with the Dark Knight trilogy. And it's funny, even from what you see from the Batman vs Superman trailer.
Yeah. Oh, we'll discuss that one too in a moment. Yeah, that. But no, so
I think you're right.
from now, Marvel tends to have a more realistic approach.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe DC's changed it in these years
Sure.
since I ever read a DC comic, but Marvel had always felt like traditionally had a more realistic approach to their characters and the narratives, and the DC had a more brighter, over the top, more inspiring approach to their narratives. You know, with the exception of Batman, most of their comics usually used to have more of a lighter tone. The atmosphere was brighter. The conclusions were better.
Yeah.
Batman was that exception. But now, I mean, quite possibly they've caught on to how Batman is so attractive to everyone that they're spinning that for all the other characters. And I'm not sure that it's going to water down the experience for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I might be wrong. And like I said, I don't keep up
But I
with
think
DC
you're right,
comics,
though.
So.
It's going a little dark.